And we are live. I am Father James. This is Barely Protestant. And here we have James Austin from High Church Memes for Anglo-Catholic Teens.
As well as Episcopoomer.
Yeah, Episcopoomer. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that one. Yes, the Episcopoomer page. Yes, it's amazing.
Let's sing and dance in the inclusive spirit of the Episcopal Church.
Oh, yes. Anyway, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. I just got back
good.
from work, and it was an all right day. It was a pretty slow day, but I was still able to make some money.
Oh, good. Glad to hear that. So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself then. Like, you are a traditional Anglican within the Episcopal Church, or I guess you could say a traditional Episcopalian within the Episcopal Church USA, which is definitely not known for its stalwart traditional, positions.
No.
Tell us a little bit about your journey, about sort of what brought you into the Episcopal Church and sort of why you find yourself there today, I guess. Or first, you want to talk about your page, I guess. Either way.
So, all right, both pages. So, first one, High Church Memes for Anglo-Catholic Teens. It's really just an Anglican meme page. I noticed there's a lot of Lutheran meme pages, Roman Catholic meme pages, countless Baptist meme pages, and there weren't really any Anglican meme pages, so I decided just to make one as a hobby, and little to know, and not to brag or anything, but now I have like 1,000 something followers, and now I'm pretty big on the Christian meme scene.
There you go. 1,700 followers right now. That's awesome. But not to brag, but I have 1,900 followers on Facebook.
Oh, wow.
Well, you're up to me.
You're kind of the OG Anglican meme page.
Thank you. There are people who take it way too seriously. I'm like, these are memes, people. Like, I'm right now having some. I posted a meme making fun of indulgences being sold, which is an undeniable fact. Indulgences were sold in the Middle Ages, and like that is part of what sparked the Reformation. Like, no one denies that historically. And like some Eastern Orthodox guy is like complaining about it, like literally a meme, just making fun of like the idea of indulgences being sold.
Everyone
no one believes that anymore. Anyway,
but people believed that in the 1500s.
Exactly. And it was like literally a meme about Martin Luther talking about it. I'm just like, the context, even if you want to take a stupid meme seriously, it's literally the context being in the Middle Ages or during the dawn of the Reformation. Anyway, it's ridiculous. I mean, John Fisher 2.0 is a Roman Catholic, and he gets annoyed with these people who are very who can't take memes seriously. Besides Tucker Carlson, I'm surprised to find another conservative Episcopalian. There are a few out there.
I'm very proud to have Tucker Carlson under our belt. He's like the American version of Peter Hitchens as far as Anglicanism goes.
Yeah. Hey, Father James, clean your camera. Wait, I did though. Did I have to clean it again? I hope not. He's joking or complaining and talking about this because last time when we did it, my camera wasn't cleaned. All right, let me go and check. Ready? Here we go. Oh, it looks the same. It's just the light. That's all it is. It's a little bit clearer, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, oh well. Anyway, sorry, I'm distracting us. Go ahead and tell us about yourself, James Austin.
Well, I was raised in the Roman Catholic Church in a fairly devout family. We weren't super duper devout, but we went to mass every Sunday and most holy days of obligation, and I was in catechism class and then youth group, and I really loved my Roman Catholic youth group, and I still am connected to a lot of people in there. And so
So what got you away from the Roman Catholic Church then and into, I guess, eventually the Episcopal Church? Like what happened there?
Well, so a little background. My great grandma on my father's side was Lutheran, so I had exposure to another high church Protestant tradition. It wasn't Anglicanism, but like there were big German Lutherans on that side. That was my great grandma, and so I was already pretty. I also watched a lot of Davy and Goliath growing up.
Nice, totally Lutheran. Yes.
Yeah, so I already had some Lutheran sympathies instilled in me. I obviously didn't end up becoming Lutheran, but that's a whole nother story. So the thing that started to turn me off about the Roman Catholic Church is how this is such a heavy word, and for lack of a better word, how sectarian it was.
Yeah.
Like I really didn't agree with the idea that all Christians outside of communion with Rome were not a part of the true church.
Yeah.
And that really didn't sit well with me. And growing up Roman Catholic, I was taught that I had no idea there were Protestants out there that believed in the real presence in the Eucharist or had apostolic succession or a priesthood. Had high views of the saints or Mary.
Yeah.
I was taught that the universal Protestant position on all those things were the Eucharist is a symbol, praying to Mary is idolatry.
Those sorts of things, yeah. But I mean, I don't want this to be a sort of focus on sort of bashing on the Roman Catholics.
I'm not trying to bash.
No, yeah, I'm not saying you are. I'm just wanting to clarify for the audience. As people know, I'm not a big fan of sort of like the idea of trying to take from other traditions, especially liturgical sacramental traditions. But yeah, anyway, you went from Roman Catholicism in part because of what you would claim, and I would agree with this term, but like the sectarian sort of mentality. And so you go from there. How did you get into what did you find yourself into at that point?
What do you mean?
Like, so you find how do you find yourself going from Roman Catholicism to the Episcopal Church itself ultimately?
Well, so here's another Lutheran influence: Lutheran satire. I started watching Lutheran satire videos around this time. And they really started Lutheran Satire is a great channel. Their videos are very funny, but they're also very informal. Like they're very educational.
Yeah,
and
this is true.
they're very educational. And first, at still being pretty stunned, like right before freshman year of high school, I became one of those super trad Roman Catholics that you see online.
Yeah.
I was one of those edgelord teenagers who are obsessed with Crusader armor and
hey, Crusader armor is pretty awesome, not gonna lie.
I know, but like finding all these videos that are even remotely against Catholicism and smashing Dea's Vault in the comment section in all caps.
I know the type.
I was one of those trad Roman Catholics. Yeah. And that was...
I have a lot of those types that follow the channel here. I have quite a few of those types. Good.
So, yeah, that was freshman year of high school. And then sophomore year, I discovered Lutheran satire. And it really got me, those videos, said a bunch of stuff those videos were. So I thought those videos were funny.
They challenged the sort of Roman narrative of themselves and everything.
Yeah, first being the super trad Roman Catholic I got offended.
Yeah.
But then I started to really look into it.
Mm-hmm.
I started looking at church history and scripture, and I realized that like a lot of the stuff like taught in the Roman Catholic Church is like only vaguely at best found in scripture or church history. So I started to look elsewhere, and this is where I sort of became a cage stage Protestant.
Mm-hmm.
Not even with a specific denomination. I just became a cage stage. I'm still recovering from my cage stage, and like to all the high school youth volunteers I've argued with during this stage, I am sorry. I was a cringy teenager back then. Do forgive me. If you're watching, any of you happen to be watching this, please forgive me. But anyway, I started looking at other traditions. First, I went to a Lutheran church. It was an ELCA church. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a super crazy liberal ELCA church. It was just a local one down the street. I thought it was an all right congregation. But something turned me off about it. Like it was a very small congregation, and the pastor didn't even wear any vestments. He only wore a clerical shirt and a stole.
Cringy. Ooh, cringy. Yeah.
Not to badmouth anyone. And they didn't really have the ELCA doesn't really have the best music.
Mm. Some Lutheran music is really good. Have really good music, though. I'd say some Lutheran groups have some pretty good music.
I agree.
Anglican chant is amazing. Not gonna lie.
Oh, I agree. The Lutheran tradition has great music.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this particular parish didn't really take advantage of that. So I was like, this isn't really for me. I'll go somewhere else. So then I went to a United Methodist church, and I found it and this is where my theological conservative kind of came in. I found the United Methodist Church is like one of the last mainline churches to have not yet changed their stance on same-sex marriage. So I decided, this might be an all right place. Why don't I try the United Methodist Church? Turns out it was a super liberal parish.
Yeah.
And they're trying to push for change, and I was like, nope, I'm out of here. Yeah. Actually, I was also out of there when, I also fell in love with the Wesleys, John and Charles Wesley, and I still really do like them. When I was in England, I actually went to John Wesley's house, which is a museum now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was in love with the Wesleys, so I thought, might as well. I found their writings to be a lot more digestible than Luther's, who was very polemic.
Again, sorry.
I found the Wesley brothers to be a lot more easy to read or palatable to read because they weren't as polemic as Luther.
Oh yeah. Although he can be pretty polemic when he talks about Calvinism. I'm not going to deny that.
Saying Luther is polemic.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying Wesley. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I didn't really read. I did read a little bit of John Against Calvinism, but anyway, yeah, I found the Wesleys a lot more palatable than Luther. not bashing Luther. Luther brought great reform to our church, and for that I'm grateful. But I mean, the Wesleys are just made me more comfortable. We're just more comfortable. So yeah. I gave the Methodist Church a try. Was turned off by their liberal theology. I was also turned off by the fact that they used Wonder Bread and grape juice for communion, and still having that Roman Catholicism in me. Oh, look, nope. So then I hear you on that. Yeah. So then I decided to try the local Episcopal church, and I heard a lot of bad things about the Episcopal church. I mean, I would have gone, I'll say this right now. If there was an Anglican church in North America in my area that I could have ridden my bike to, I didn't have a license at the time. Uh-huh. If there was an Anglican ACNA church that in my area that was close, I would have gone there. But since there wasn't, I decided to give the local Episcopal church a try. Mm-hmm. I was skeptical, but I went there, went to the first service, and I loved it.
Awesome. Was it a Right One parish, by the way? I'm just curious about that.
No, it was Right Two.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And
yeah, go ahead.
No, you go first. I'll get into this parish.
Okay. Yeah. So, my introduction to Anglicanism was actually with the 1928 prayer book. Actually, the secret is that it actually was an American Missal, but it was basically like the American Missal uses the 28 as like the basis and then adds a few more things to it. Theology Pit is saying, I grew up Episcopalian and look what happened to me. I know. Yeah. Don't follow. No. But anyway, so Rite One is the one that sort of follows somewhat the traditional Anglican liturgy. It takes out some very important parts, I think, but Rite Two is where it just sort of goes. It's not an Anglican liturgy, I would say. It's only Anglican because it was written by people in the Anglican Church or the Episcopal Church, but it doesn't have almost any of the Anglican distinctives in it. Rite Two is just very different. And I'm not saying that therefore it's bad. It's just sort of like it's a fierce departure from the traditional Anglican. But sorry, I'm not trying to bash Rite Two, but yeah. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, it was a Rite Two parish, and it turned out to be a pretty liberal parish, and I'll get into that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I started going here, and I started going to this parish. I started to get really involved with the Anglican Church. And even though this parish was more on the liberal side, I don't want to badmouth them. It was a really good congregation. Mm-hmm. And to be fair, even though it was a more liberal parish, it wasn't like Spong levels of liberal.
Yeah.
At least it affirmed the creeds.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, in today's mainline Protestantism is almost all you can ask for. So, maybe a little more, but yeah.
Well, anyway, so what happened to you going from there? Because it seems like you're at a different church now from that one, right?
Right.
So what happened there? Did you just move for college or what happened?
It was a variety of things. Mostly because I moved. COVID pandemic was a big factor. Moving to college, but also it did turn out to be a pretty liberal parish.
Yeah.
And for a while, I became super liberal. Mm-hmm. Want to tell you about that?
Yeah, sure. Talk about that. Talk about your becoming liberal and all that sort of stuff.
So this was more as a reactionary phase to my Roman Catholic upbringing than anything, because I was still a cringy teenager. And so I joined the youth group at his parish, and not to badmouth anyone, but the youth minister was very liberal, and he's a great guy and everything, but he was very liberal, and so were all the kids. Like, we'd have nights where he talked about white privilege, and we'd always talk about social justice, which social justice is fine, at least a Christian conception of it, but not when it overshadows the gospel.
Yeah. No, I hear you on that totally.
But I decided to become super liberal. I also had a lot of liberal Christian friends who I am still friends with, but I was less mature back then, and I wanted to impress them.
Yeah.
So I decided to, and I also wanted to rebel. Again, as a reactionary phase, I want to rebel against my Roman Catholic upbringing. So
yeah,
I became super liberal, supporting women's ordination, supporting consecrating women to the episcopate, supporting gay marriage, thinking Gene Robinson was a great bishop, having high views of him. Just all sorts of things. And it was also because I felt if I wasn't this liberal, I'd be an outcast in the Anglican Church. So it was also to fit in.
Yeah. So eventually you grew out of that, though. So you saw as a sort of rebellion against your Roman upbringing and all that sort of stuff. What brought you back to being traditional then? How did that work out?
Well, at the time, I wanted to be a priest in the Church of England and not in America, and I'm still sort of considering that. So I signed up for this conference called Here I Am, which was put on by the Additional Curate Society, and this is the Society of St. Hilda and St. Wilfrid. And those people, so if you don't know what the Society of St. Hilda and Wilfrid is, it's basically an alternative council of bishops in the Church of England for people who don't accept women's ordination. And I think that's such a wonderful thing. I wish we could have that in the Episcopal Church. It would solve so many problems if we did. And so I went to this conference in England, and it cured me of my theological liberalism. I saw all these people who were in great standing with the Anglican Communion, even in the Western world. And I was like, okay, maybe I don't have to sacrifice all this orthodoxy to become an Anglican / Episcopalian. Maybe theological, maybe not changing to please the world is a good thing. Maybe that's what the church should be doing.
Yes, amen to that. So you saw that you went to that conference and it changed you. And then where did we go from there? Like, what brought you into moving into this other parish? And is this one now a more traditional one? And how does that journey go? Yeah.
So a few things. Number one, COVID. My diocese shut down all its churches during the pandemic, except for a few. And a brave few stayed open. I don't know if the diocese shut them all down. I think it was a certain, I don't know how it worked. I think it might have been depending on the size of the congregation, but don't quote me on that. But it also, but a brave few stayed open, and this one was one of them. Number two, moving for college. This one was a lot closer to my college than my old parish was. It was also the nearest parish to my college that I knew of that was open. And number three, I knew it was a lot more traditional, so I'd feel so. I knew that was better for me and my spirituality, and I hate to say all these bad things about the parish I came into Anglicanism into, because it really wasn't a bad parish. Like they were. Oh, this brings me into another reason why I'm going to this new parish. So my old parish. So I was in the confirmation class in my old parish, and the Bishop of Denver is a woman, and I don't accept the validity of women bishops. So
yeah,
I knew. So the priest of this parish is a member of the Society of the Holy Cross, which is also opposed to women's ordination. So I knew they wouldn't have their kids confirmed by a female bishop either. So I asked my confirmation sponsor, who's this really great guy. He's a military chaplain, or a retired military chaplain. He is a canon in our diocese, and he's a really great guy. I asked him if I could be confirmed at St. Michael's, because I can't in good conscience, or not confirmed, but received.
Yeah.
I cannot in good conscience support a female bishop confirming all these students.
Yeah. And they said yes?
They said yes.
Oh, awesome.
I was really worried about the youth pastor who was running the confirmation class. His reaction, but surprisingly, he was A-okay with it.
Oh, interesting. Nice. So, you were able to get received through a male bishop and all that.
Unfortunately, because of this pandemic, I haven't been received yet.
Okay.
We're still they're looking at October.
And
I really hope I'm able to be received soon.
Yeah. Awesome.
So I started going to this parish, and this parish is called St. Michael and All Angels. It's in Denver. If you're ever in the Denver area, please check us out. It's a great Anglo-Catholic parish.
Nice. I'll definitely have to check it out. I'm closer now to Denver now that I live in California.
Yeah, so. if you're ever here in the area.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started going to St. Michael and All Angels because it was closer to my college, and the rest is history.
Nice. Okay. So what is it like then, sort of being an Episcopalian who's actually very traditional? And often what I've noticed, because I know quite a few Episcopalians through Trinity, my seminary, is that what passes for conservative there within the Episcopal Church, I would personally be uncomfortable calling it conservative, because they would still be for women's ordination, even to the episcopate. Like that's sort of the state of the Episcopal Church today, where conservative is basically like, I oppose gay quote marriage, but like they would still be okay with things like women's ordination, things like that. So you're conservative on my level of understanding of conservative, like, which would make you incredibly conservative for the Episcopal Church. So how does that work out?
Well, it's really, I mean, I get flack from all sides. I get flack from liberal Episcopalians. I get flack from ACNA/Continuum. I get flack from Roman Catholics and Evangelicals for staying in a church that supports such heretical things.
Yeah.
I get flack from all sorts of sides, and I've really become, like, depending on how nasty it is, I've really become hardened to it. Of course, there are some things that really get under my skin, but I know the state of the Episcopal Church.
No, yeah. Well, and that's the thing that's kind of annoying and frustrating when I'm talking with others who are outside of the Anglican tradition. They tend to sort of like poke fun at us as being like, this idea of, oh, well, you guys are just liberal and all that sort of stuff. And I go, well, first of all, the vast majority of Anglicanism is actually not liberal. They are at least moderate, if not conservative. So, for instance, the vast majority of Anglicans in the world are opposed to women in the episcopate. Now, when it comes to women in the priesthood, unfortunately, it's about half and half within the Anglican communion. But the vast majority are opposed to women in the episcopate. Then you've got of provinces. Then you've got things like gay quote marriage.
With gay marriage,
the vast majority are opposed to that.
With gay marriage, like 3% of Anglicans worldwide support it.
Yeah, it's very minute. What is the problem is that it's recognized in the Episcopal Church, which is sort of the face of Anglicanism to the United States.
Right.
And then it's being pushed in places like Canada and in England and et cetera. And so like there are these constant pushes for that. So that is why it's seen as sort of like the liberal church, because the shrinking and dying segments, and no offense to the Episcopal Church for you, especially to you, but like the Episcopal Church is dying. Like it is like very much shrinking.
Yeah, I know.
It lost in the past 15 years, it's lost 25% of its members. Part of that was obviously due to the ACNA, but like even without that major chunk, it's just been on continual decline the past few decades.
Yeah, I know.
Same thing with the Church of England and all that sort of stuff. And my hope with this is actually that the sort of what are known as the communion partners, which are the more conservative traditional dioceses, like Dallas, like Central Florida, et cetera. Like I guess apparently not maybe Denver, but the bishop that you were received under. Those sorts of dioceses will grow and do better and sort of be a sort of like the only ones that remain out of the rest of the Episcopal Church that's dying.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen because I think that's probably what's. I pray, here's something. I pray every night for the declining provinces in the Anglican Communion.
Yeah.
I pray every night about it. It's heart-wrenching to see our numbers shrinking and our church trying all these things that they know doesn't work.
Yeah.
But they do it anyway because they don't know what else to do.
No, yeah. And honestly, it goes to your Episcoboomer Facebook page. It's that sort of thing. I mean, it's like the grandma who's trying to be hip and cool with the young kids. It's like, hey, let's do, transgender pet marriages or whatever. And just like, okay, stop trying to be cool. We don't think you're edgy or cool,
I know, here's the thing. I think the great decline of the Episcopal Church is that it stopped seeing itself as an Anglican tradition and it started seeing itself as Catholic light, as per Robin Williams in his comedy routine.
I'm not as familiar with Robin Williams' comedy routine on that part, but I'll say this. I think the issue with the Episcopal Church is that it was trying to be relevant. That's part of what I think was the problem, because if you read, for instance,
that's a big part of it.
Yeah, if you read, I don't know if you've read Ross Douthat. He's a Roman Catholic. He wrote a book called Bad Religion. I actually have it on my shelf over there. It's a really good book. I really highly recommend it. He sort of talks about the decline of the mainline churches within the United States. Part of it is due to the fact that they saw the power that they were getting when they did civil rights, which civil rights is good, not denying that. That was a movement that we had to fight alongside with, be a part of. But they saw that and they were like, oh, we need to keep doing this sort of civil rights sort of thing. And then they ended up going into sort of the sexuality thing. And that's when they started saying, well, now social justice is a higher cause than fidelity to Scripture. And so part of it, and it's multifaceted. It's not just that issue. There were other factors involved in it, honestly, the Marxism of the being infiltrated into the universities and seminaries was another major part of it too. But actually, yeah. Anyway, so but what I was going to say before is this is something that is not unique to Anglicanism. What the problem is, it's very much a problem for all of the traditions within Christendom, virtually all of them. You find it in Roman Catholicism, definitely. You find it within the Eastern Orthodox tradition. You find it with Lutheranism, the Methodists, even the Baptists today are dealing with it in their own various forms. So this is not something that's unique to the Episcopal Church. This is something that happened early to the Episcopal Church as well as others. Anyway, sorry.
But yeah, I think the problem with the Episcopal Church is that it's sort of like stopped seeing itself as the unique Anglican tradition and started seeing itself as Catholic light. It started seeing itself as
Roman Catholic, you mean?
Yeah, Roman Catholic. Yeah, Roman Catholic. But they won't say Roman Catholic. They'll say Catholic light.
Yeah.
They stopped. Shit, what am I trying to say here? I really should have prepared better.
Of course, but you're saying that they were aping Rome, basically. And you see that with post-Vatican II, honestly.
Yeah, it's like the liturgical movement. Like they see all these Roman Catholics who are and this isn't all of it by any means, but they see all these Roman Catholics who are disaffected from Rome, all these liberal Roman Catholics, and they're like, and it's not just Roman Catholic, it's also evangelicals, and they see all these Christians from more conservative traditions who don't like their church and their church's stances, and they're like, oh, hey, come over here. We're like that church, but we're light. We're liberal. We're cool. We're woke.
We allow contraception. We allow abortion. We allow that sort of mentality. You're saying, right?
Yeah. And in the process, they're giving up the Anglican identity, which they probably don't even want to associate with because they feel they have a sort of WASP guilt, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. They have a guilt to that. They feel guilt. They're guilty that they've been associated with slave owners and which is bad, and like all these bad people in the past who have been Episcopalian, right up to Henry VIII, which I do not think Henry VIII started the Anglican Church, but they see Henry VIII and they're like, oh my gosh. They see Henry VIII. They see all the slave owners. They see all these bad people who have been Anglican, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. We need to erase this. We need to this is all a part of our identity. We need to get rid of that identity. So we lose our identity. We start becoming this church of just believe whatever. And people don't want to be in a church that believes whatever. People don't want to be told they can believe whatever. Maybe they do for like a short amount of time, but sooner or later they start craving concrete answers. And when the church doesn't give them concrete answers, they go elsewhere.
No, yeah, I agree. And that's the thing for me. So this is an example of this. When I was in my undergrad, I did a religious studies program as part of my minor, and I really loved it. I was really hoping that before we graduated, there would be a religious studies major. They were still developing it and working their way up for that. But literally the year after I graduated, they finally established a religious studies major, which is what I would have done instead of philosophy. But so I was able to do it as a minor, though. And I would interact with a lot of non-Christians in those groups, in our classes. And some of the classes we would visit various different religious traditions. We would visit Buddhism or Hinduism or Islam or other things like that. And what part of it was we actually had to visit a religious tradition that we were not a part of. And so I think I went to a Hindu temple for mine. For that class in particular. I know I went to a Hindu temple, but I think it was for that particular class. Anyway, there were these two girls who went to a Jewish Reform Judaism synagogue, which is, for those who don't know, Reform Judaism is very liberal. You don't have to believe in God kind of thing. It just doesn't matter. And they were like, oh yeah, it was so cool. I loved it. And it was like, this is it. And they were like talking about how much they loved it. Like, yeah, I want to go back sometime and all that sort of stuff. Of course, they never went back. And my point being is that like, you're going to get that initial like, oh, this is so cool from people. Like with the Episcopal Church, they're gonna be like, oh wow, this is so cool. You can be transgender. You can have 5 wives or 5 husbands. It doesn't matter. And like they're going to be all cooled out by that, the young people, but they're not going to be devoted. They might go once.
Exactly. Like the Episcopal Church and a lot of Anglicans in the Western world are trying to impress people who have no interest in the church.
Yeah, like they're not going to be devoted. And if they even start going every Sunday, they're not going to tithe. They're not going to be like sacrificing their own lives for this, because sacrifice isn't important to them. It's, I'm just joining this thing that's cool and I want to get free stuff out of it. Like that's essentially what's going to happen. And
exactly.
Because the tradition of the liberal tradition does not demand anything from it. Whereas with the conservative tradition of Anglicanism or any other form of Christianity, it demands sacrifice. It demands that you take up your cross. It says, oh no, actually having sexual relations outside of marriage is wrong, and lusting is actually wrong. And you actually have a standard that you have to hold to. You're actually not supposed to be lying. You're actually not supposed to be, little stealing. Like stealing from your employer is not a fighting against the capitalist evil patriarchal system. It's actually wrong. You shouldn't be stealing. So that is the issue. That if you're going to join a club that doesn't demand anything of you, what's the point of the club? Why do I need to wake up then and go to church if it's just this thing that I go to that just affirms everything that I'm already affirming of myself?
Right.
So that's the thing I preach. Even on a pragmatic level, liberalism just does not help. Like it does not help grow your church. So
exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Mm. So yeah, that's the thing right now, and I'm always wanting and willing to work with the Episcopalians I know who can't find an ACNA church, or even if they can, but like are in a traditional parish kind of thing. I'm willing to work with them and try to do what I can to sort of help heal this schism within us. But yeah, I can't compromise my positions either. So like I can't accept women's ordination to the episcopate especially. And I can't. I don't receive from women like priests or things like that. There was that one time, but I already talked about it with Samson, and that was a very difficult situation. So it's like I don't want to compromise my principles, but I also want to make inroads and try to work with what I can with those in the church. So gentlemen like you, I've got a friend named Zach who is also an Episcopalian. One of my former roommates. Yeah, one of my former roommates and a friend of mine from seminary. His name is Miguel. He's also more of a traditional Anglican in the Episcopal Church and everything. And I want to work within with those people, and I want them to do well, and I want you guys to grow in the Episcopal Church, because those are the only ones that will be able to grow. I don't know if you know George Conger. Mm-hmm. So Anglican Inc. is basically like the closest thing we have to EWTN. Just look up Anglican Inc. on YouTube.
Oh, I know Anglican Inc.
Yeah, George Conger is the Episcopal priest there, the priest within the Episcopal Church. Mm-hmm. His church is growing. He's under the Diocese of Central Florida. So under what's his name, Brewer, Bishop Brewer, who's a more traditional Anglican or Episcopalian, opposes women or not opposes women ordination, but opposes gay quote marriage. And his parish is growing. And others that I know that are more traditional are growing. The Dallas diocese is growing. In fact, someone who is in the Diocese of Dallas before I was ordained, offered me a job and said basically hey, if you want a job, a secure job, you can get one at the Diocese of Dallas. And I kindly rejected the offer with respect and everything. I felt that the fact that I was sort of raised into Anglicanism through the ACNA/REC, that like I felt that my loyalty should be to that tradition.
And that's another reason why I feel I should stay in the Episcopal Church, because I came to Anglicanism through the Episcopal Church, so I feel that's the way I should stay. No,
yeah, I hear you. No, I totally agree. I'm very much against the idea of just switching denominations willy-nilly. I say this, people might think I'm being a hypocrite on this because I went from the ACNA to the REC, but the ACNA and REC are essentially the same denomination. Like, we're in full communion with each other. That's not the thing I'm talking about. And that's more of I moved to a different state, and this was the jurisdiction I would be under. So it's essentially like just going from one bishop to another. Like, we're in full communion and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, for me, it is, and I've done a video on this, I don't think you should leave your faith tradition unless you can't be little o Orthodox in it. So for you, like, you went from Rome to the Episcopal Church because there are major issues with Rome's theology and all that sort of stuff, and I understand and agree with that. Mm-hmm. But now you're in the Episcopal Church, and you can maintain your orthodoxy in there, right? Right now. So, right. And that is, to me, what's important. Like, if you can maintain your orthodoxy there, then
this is why I always say when people ask me why I'm not still Roman Catholic with how conservative I am. This is what I always say. At least being biblically orthodox in the Episcopal Church is arguably allowed. Mm-hmm. At least I cannot say the same with Rome.
Yeah. I
am disgusted by the Episcopal Church's position on abortion. I do not agree with its position on marriage. I do not agree with consecrating women to the episcopate. But at least I'm allowed not to agree.
Yeah.
At least I can be at least I'm not. At least those positions aren't infallible.
Yeah.
I can't say the same about Rome, where I have to accept purgatory and
papal infallibility, the Immaculate Conception, and all that sort of stuff. And that's a similar position to me. So, for instance, I actually I hold to the assumption of the Blessed Virgin. I believe that she was bodily assumed into heaven. And well, I'm okay with the fact. I'm not opposed to it, and I lean that way. I'm not like dogmatically sure about it. But at the same time, I oppose the idea that the bodily assumption has been made into dogma. I don't think it should ever be dogma. So like that's an issue I have with the Roman Catholic Church. I don't agree with the Immaculate Conception, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily heresy. But the fact that it's dogma now is a major issue. So for me, even like if I were to be an Episcopalian, because I when I became Anglican, it was actually in the same geographical area as one of the communion partners, which is the more conservative of them. But I just wasn't aware. Like I became Anglican because of the parish that I was at, kind of thing, that I visited. And so, where was I going at with this? But like if I were to be in that traditional parish or that more traditional Episcopal diocese, I'm sure I would have been able to maintain the theology I have here, that I have now as an Anglican. But that is one of the issues I do have with Rome, that like they demand things that I believe are heretical or that are not Roman Catholic friend of mine, John Fisher. Anyone who denies lesbians to the episcopate, anathema. Anglican, I wouldn't be surprised if the Episcopal Church does make them infallible positions soon. I will say that it's difficult to see how one could be a traditional bishop within the Episcopal Church today because of what is that recent thing, the thing that happened to Bishop William Love. Yeah, Bishop that's William a sad Love. Thing. And so, like, I will say that I do find it more difficult today, but at least on a lay person level and maybe on a priest, a presbyterate and diaconate level, I don't think it's impossible.
And there are a lot of conservatives, not necessarily theologically, but but definitely generally conservative people. Even at this, I'm sort of changing the subject here, if you don't mind, but
that's fine.
At the liberal parish I went to when I first came into Anglicanism, like there are people with like pro-life bumper stickers and I do not like the man at all, but they had Trump bumper stickers, even though the priest regularly preached against him. And so like the thing is like a lot of Episcopalians are not these super left-leaning people. Like there's this great book I read by Caswell Cook, shout out, called The Death and Resurrection of the Episcopal Church.
Oh.
And it wasn't really a theology book. It was more of practical things the Episcopal Church can do to reverse its decline. And I thought it was such a great book. It had such great advice.
Link that to me if you could. Not right now necessarily, but like later or something. I do want to read that book. I am interested in seeing what is argued. I mean, Leander Harding. I'm a huge fan of Leander Harding, and he actually taught at Trinity. He's an Episcopalian, and I know quite a few Episcopalians that I have a lot of respect for. Aside from the ones I already spoke about, I do want to talk. Let's get to a few of the things here. There's some questions. Theology Pit. I interviewed him a few days ago, or about a week ago or so. Serious question for high church memes for Anglo-Catholic teens. Do you think of yourself as a missionary? What is your ultimate goal as a mission, like in the Episcopal Church?
I never really thought of myself as a missionary. I feel like that would kind of be a prideful label to put on myself.
Okay.
But I do feel like, I mean, maybe later when I'm actually planning on going to seminary after college and getting ordained. I feel like that's my calling. So don't know if I necessarily see myself as a
missionary right now. I think he means more in the sense of just like you being a missionary, like sort of being sort of a missionary into the Episcopal Church itself. You know?
Well, no, I wouldn't even say that because as of now, I'm not really sorting out to evangelize liberal Episcopalians into more orthodox positions. At least not very intensely.
Okay.
I see myself more as I don't see myself. I'll put it this way. I don't see myself as a missionary to the Episcopal Church. I see myself as a missionary of the Episcopal Church, if you're going to use missionary in that sense.
Okay. Pablo says, sure, liberalism doesn't work, but crazy evangelicals does not work either. So much abuse happens in evangelical churches. Actually, that's why I left. That's part of why I left evangelicalism and became Anglican. There were some other ones here. This is a Lutheran, Gabe. Do you agree with women's ordination to the priesthood? We both disagree with that. Purgatory can be easily argued from the Bible. We won't get into that. I might do a video on purgatory one day. Let's see what else we have. I wouldn't be surprised if the Episcopal Church. Oh, we already did that one. All right, theosis. Hi, Michael. I know he's another Episcopalian. This is actually not Cranmer, nor is it Hooker. That is William Laud. That right there, that statue or that toy is Gandalf. And then that right there is Umbreon, the Pokemon, and under that is the Songbird. But the portrait is William Laud. Question for both guys. Why are you guys not Lutherans?
Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. The Lutherans that I know do not have valid apostolic confession, and they don't even claim to try to have that. I love Lutheranism. If I wasn't Anglican, I'd probably be Lutheran, or at least Old Catholic, I would say, depending. But Yeah, I think one of the issues that I do have with Lutherans is that they err on the side of the exclusivism that we were talking about, like with Roman Catholics. So like the Missouri Synod, which would be one of the ones that I would actually join if I were to become Lutheran, they are more apt, like if there's a question of whether or not someone should receive communion, they'd be more like, okay, we're not going to have you receive communion. So I hold to more or less the same exact position of real presence as they do. But according to their standards, they would probably not let me receive communion because I don't hold to the Book of Concord as a confessional standard. For me, that is a very serious problem because I'm going to have to answer to God as a priest on why I did not let someone receive Christ. I am never going to have to answer to God for why I gave someone the Eucharist and they received it unworthily. But I will have to answer to God if I, as a priest, say, if I stand before, when I stand before the judgment seat and God points out, hey, there was that time, May 21st, whenever, where you fenced the table when someone should have been receiving my son, but you did not let him receive my son. Why did that happen? Like, I'm going to have to answer for that, and I would rather not. I'm fine with me giving someone Christ, and they are not unworthily receiving it, within reason, obviously. But like, does that, if that makes sense? Does that make sense to you, James?
Oh yeah, I thought you were asking the viewer.
So what's your reason?
Pretty much the same reasons you gave. Lutheranism in America. If you were listening earlier, I tried the ELCA and I didn't really like that. And the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod is just very exclusive. It's even worse than Rome in that standpoint.
Yeah,
I would be Lutheran if I might even be Lutheran if I lived somewhere else. Like if I lived in, like, say, Latvia or Russia, I'd probably be Lutheran. I think because those churches are still, their Lutheran churches are still very confessional, but they also have valid apostolic succession, which is another major issue. The Lutheran Church Missouri Synod doesn't have valid holy orders, so I wouldn't feel comfortable receiving the body Christ from one of their pastors, nor would they probably let me. So
yeah. All right, let's move on to the next one. We got a lot. I want to try to go through them as quickly as possible. What's the Anglican Church opinion on what career job an individual should have? This is a really interesting question. Is it a mortal sin to not pick the job God wants you to have? I've never heard of that more or less in any tradition. I guess I'm not sure what to do with that. I guess you should do what God wants you to do. I guess. We have better beer. Yes, Anglicans have the best beer. Just got on. So I was wondering. Let's see. I don't think I could listen to it. I don't think I could listen to a priest rabbiting on about his Marxist politics in the pulpit. I agree. Let's see. Okay, Pablo, I don't believe there's a certain position of the Anglican Church's unemployment vocation in the world. Yeah, I agree. Just obey God. Like that's the theology pit. I know a great seminary in Western PA he can go to. He's talking about our seminary that we went to, which is Trinity School for Ministry. He's a presbyter in the he's a Presbyterian, so he's only half okay. Question for you: what is your opinion on Pentecostal evangelical churches?
I think they don't have a lot of. I don't think it's the most true expression of Christianity. Like they don't have a valid Eucharist or valid holy orders, depending on the church. I don't know. There might be some Episcopal Pentecostals, but
well, my issue with the sort of whole charismatic movement is that it tends to be undefined, and it tends to be based not on sort of dogma, but more on feelings in general.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's more Yeah, it's more feelings based, but on that same token, Pentecostals are saved Christians. They're you can be saved in the Pentecostal church. They have a valid baptism, and there are many holy people, in that church.
Gabe, the Lutheran again. I disagree. My father was an Anglican priest who was allowed to commune in the LCMS. Well, that's good. I'm glad about that. But I would say that even if you have a Reformed understanding of the Eucharist, like a Calvin understanding of the Eucharist, you should still receive. And you would disagree on that. And I do know Lutherans who would not let me receive. So in the Missouri Synod. So there's that issue as well. For me, it's I would rather err on the other side, where I'm letting someone receive who shouldn't receive, than not letting someone receive who should receive. Anyway, all right, go ahead, James.
That reminds me of another reason I'm not Lutheran. Another reason I'm not Lutheran is because, and I do love the Lutheran Church, but another reason I'm not Lutheran is because the Lutheran Church, at least in America, is just so divided. There's like 20 different Lutheran denominations here. And what really attracted me to Anglicanism is its unity.
Which is kind of like, there are issues with the unity right now, but historically, Anglicanism has been the most sort of unified sort of Protestantism within the West.
Exactly. And it still is today, arguably.
Yeah. The thing is, the reason why we're sort of considered the forefront when it comes to schism is that when schism happens, it is actually a big deal. Whereas it's not so big of a deal within the other traditions of Protestantism.
Exactly.
Prior to the 70s, I think there's only one sort of significant schism that we could talk about within the Episcopal Church, and that's the Reformed Episcopal Church.
Which is in communion with many Anglican communion provinces anyway. So nowadays.
So Gabe says there's a lot of nuances within confessional Lutheranism. You should consider getting a Lutheran on here to talk about it. I've been trying to, just a variety of reasons, they haven't worked out. I think it would make for an interesting conversation. I'd love to. And actually, I know Gabe. I might actually ask if Gabe is interested. Maybe I can offer him. See, Michael, Wisconsin Synod or Missouri Synod? I'm not sure what you're asking about with that.
If we had to choose, I'd probably go with the Missouri Synod.
Oh, definitely Missouri Synod. Yeah. Let's see what else. Question for both. This is John Fisher. Who is your favorite church father? For me, Athanasius, St. Athanasius.
Probably Augustine.
Oh, cool. Yeah, definitely Augustine's amazing.
I really need to become more familiar with the church fathers, though. I admit that it's not really like I didn't really read as much church fathers as I should have. I really should read more church fathers, but yeah, that's something I plan on doing.
Have you ever noticed that those who claim to have apostolic succession are the largest group of Christians that non-Romans claim have it wrong? Sounds like valid orders and AS does not equate right belief. Well, yeah, valid orders and apostolic succession do not equate right belief.
That's why we're not Roman Catholic.
Well, even they would admit, like, a bishop can err, obviously. They would even say a pope can err. Are the largest group of Christians that well, I mean, we're the largest group of Protestants. So there. Let's see. Do you think? No. Do you think oneness Pentecostals have a valid baptism? No, because it's not Trinitarian. Your thoughts?
I don't even know anything about oneness Pentecostal, so I can't really.
They deny the Trinity. They deny the Trinity. So
yeah, definitely not.
Sean Besa, question for Father James. Since you are a really big sci-fi fan, you should do a podcast with Dr. Cooper on sci-fi stories, since Dr. Cooper is also a big sci-fi fan. Hey, if you want to get that, I could try. I mean, I am pretty busy as it is because I work as a teacher and as a priest, and I do this. But I'm actually listening to a new science fiction podcast Derivatively science fiction. It's for those who've been listening to me the past few weeks, especially, I've become obsessed with. I've loved board games for years, but I've become obsessed recently with a board game series, a board game called Twilight Imperium, and so I've been listening to a podcast on the board game. It's about the board game itself. The podcast is called what's it called again? Space Cats and Peace Turtles. And if you know anything about Twilight Imperium, that makes perfect sense and it's hilarious. But I've been trying to get people to play it with me. It's a fun game. I love it. But yeah, maybe I might do a sci-fi podcast if I ever have time. But I'm actually writing science fiction. I love writing science fiction. Space Anglicanism. Yeah, that was last episode. It's not that they deny the Trinity, it's that they baptize in Jesus' name alone. It's actually, well, both. I mean, it's one thing to internally deny the Trinity, but like that's manifested in their baptizing in Jesus' name alone. So yeah. Okay. Who is my favorite desert church father? I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of the desert fathers, honestly. I guess St. Anthony, but that's because St. Athanasius. So there. Imagine if the Roman Catholic Church or some other Christians started making video games. I mean, there are those who do. Excuse me. What was the C.S. Lewis one I saw a while back? We're getting a lot. Not sure about this. C.S. Lewis pretty much cornered the market on that one. I'm not sure what's being referred to there. Anyway, we're getting a lot right now. We got like 13. What do you think of this one? What do you think of those smaller Anglican provinces, the ACC, and the others? There tends to be a lot of bickering amongst them, but I think that that's gotten better in the past few years. What are your thoughts on them, like the ACC, the APA, and all that?
The Continuum. I think they're like the Anglican. Honestly, I think they're the Anglican equivalent of the of Sedevacantists. If that's how you pronounce it?
No, I understand that. Like the worst of it can be that, definitely. And in fact, I was offered to work with a particular one I won't name, and I found out that this particular bishop was literally just sort of telling untruths about another bishop that was in the Continuum, a different part of the Continuum. I'm just like, okay, I'm not interested in that infighting.
Yeah.
Peter Lightheart. I have a lot of respect. If you're more sacramental, please be more sacramental. Like for instance, Timothy George is a Baptist, and he works I think he might be the dean of a seminary. Can't remember what it's called, Beeson Divinity School. And he's much more sacramental friendly within his own tradition of baptism, of Baptists. And same with like Peter Lightheart. He's a Presbyterian who's basically an Anglican in all but name, I guess. But yeah, let's see. Can lay people lead Vespers or Matins? Yes, they can. Sorry, I'm just going through a bunch of the questions right now. Let's see. Fantasy. Anglo fantasy equals Molinism. Anglican fantasy equals Molinism. Sure. Is the seat of Canterbury empty? What would you say?
No.
No. Same here.
I don't agree with a lot of what Justin Welby says, but I guess it could be a lot worse. And as long as we have a valid male bishop as Archbishop of Canterbury, who is consecrated by at least 3 other male bishops, the seat of Canterbury will always be occupied.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's the same thing that like Roman Catholics have with a lot of the traditional Roman Catholics have with like Pope Francis. He says a lot of cringy things and all that sort of stuff. There's actually a girl a few months ago, a while back, that I was speaking with, and she and I liked each other, but she was a Sedevacantist. That was a really interesting relationship that never got off the ground because she was just so trad, like hardcore trad. She would tell me, like, if we were to ever get married, you would have to sign before we got married, you'd have to sign an agreement with me that our children would be raised Roman Catholic. I'm like, but you're a Sedevacantist. Like, that doesn't even make sense. I eventually had to unfriend her. She was just way too hardcore. Does N.T. Wright represent Anglicanism well? In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. Like the women's ordination thing, he doesn't represent well. His rejection of gay marriage and all that, he represents relatively well. Because he does reject that. What are your thoughts on N.T. Wright?
I think he's a pretty good bishop. I think he's one of the Church of England's better non-society bishops.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, definitely.
And even though I don't support women's ordination, I don't really let his views on it, like that doesn't really taint him as much as it would for some other people. And yeah, I think he's pretty good. I'm proud to be of the tradition of N.T. Wright.
No, yeah, there's a lot I love about N.T. Wright. What if they elevate a woman? I think this is to the See of Canterbury thing. I would say that there would be an empty seat at that point. Yeah,
there would be an empty seat. I would pray that the next bishop would be. We've already had an empty seat here in the Episcopal Church when Catherine Jefferts Shorey was bishop. But
what's interesting about that, though, I do want to point this out, that in the Episcopal Church, the presiding bishop doesn't have a diocese, which is really odd. That's pretty much unique amongst all the Episcopal, like little e Episcopal traditions, like Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, because even the Bishop of Rome is the Bishop of Rome. The presiding bishop does not have a geographical diocese or any diocese of any sort. It's really odd. Anyway. The presiding bishop's seat in the Episcopal Church has already been vacant, and the Archbishop of Canterbury's seat would be vacant if they elevated a woman. And I would pray that the next bishop would be a consecrated bishop, and I do pray that never happens. I know the chances of that happening are getting higher and higher, but I pray that the Episcopal Church, not the Church of England, realize it, like stops trying to imitate us Episcopalians. Yeah.
And I just pray it doesn't happen.
I agree. Is it possible to disagree with N.T. Wright about things while coveting a picture of yourself with him? I have a picture of myself with him. I disagree with him. It's possible. Let's see. This one's fun. The Episcopal view of hell.
I mean, depends on. I mean, I'm gonna sound like a total.
Something in my eye.
I'm gonna sound like a
sorry. I have something in my eye.
Sorry. I mean, the Episcopalian view of hell should be that hell is a place of eternal death where unrepentant sinners go, or the unsaved go when they die. Unfortunately, a lot of Episcopalians have become soft on hell, and views range from, like, a lot of Episcopalians would say hell doesn't exist at all, which is not an Orthodox position.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't be the Episcopal position, but this is a church we have right now, so you'll find a lot of Episcopalians who don't believe in hell.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's sort of a pluralism and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, pluralism.
Hell in Anglicanism is when you spend eternity with Presbyterians and Congregationalists. Probably. I don't know. It depends on the Presbyterians. It depends on the Congregationalists. Anyway, I think that's all the questions we got now. Thank you very much, James. It's been awesome. Check out High Church Memes for Anglo-Catholic Teens, the Facebook page. Also check out Episcoboomer. It's one word, if I recall correctly, right?
Yeah, it's one word. It's like it's the Anglican equivalent of Susan from the Parish Council. So if you like that page, you'll love Episcoboomer. Kathleen McCarran is cooking up some wild schemes to get Reverend Chad Dankworth defrocked by Bishop Sandra Rainbow Miter. So
nice. Anyway, thank you again for being on.
So check out Episcoboomer on Facebook.
Yep. Thank you very much again, James, and hope everyone has a good day. God's blessings. Peace.
Bye.